Thanks for coming out on this snowy and chilly night. We've got a couple staff members here from Public Works tonight. It includes myself, I'm Chris Bethel, the Director of Public Works, Jeff Moline, our Assistant Director, and Tony Fowler, who's our Superintendent of Operations and oversees a number of the water and sewer and roads facilities. And then we have Gary Redsick with us, who is our forester. Both Gary and Tony have been with the village for over 36 years, so I have a lot of experience here in the community and specifically with the village's forestry programs, which is our topic for tonight. We are going to spend just a couple minutes talking about those programs and what the village has been doing with emerald ash borer and how we've planned to address that, as well as some of the programs we've put in place to help support residents with their private trees as well. We're going to only spend a short time there and then actually shift gears and turn it over to Gary, who's going to spend the bulk of the time talking about how you can properly care for your trees, as well as talking through some of the common diseases and pests you may encounter, how to identify them, as well as some of the treatments that might be available to you. Woodridge has a real long history of advocating and investing in its urban canopy. Woodridge has been a Tree City USA for 22 years. We currently have our application in for our 23rd year of receiving that award, and over 11,000 publicly owned trees in the right-of-way and on public property. Those forestry responsibilities are overseen by a foreman and 4 maintenance workers, including Gary is one of those 4, and those staff members are also responsible for road maintenance, sidewalk maintenance, streetscape. So they do have some other duties beyond forestry. We've got several certified arborists in the department as well, and those individuals go through additional schooling and training, as well as ongoing education to make sure that tree work that's going on in the community adheres to both ANSI, the American National Standards Institute, as well as the Illinois Society of Arboricultural Standards, to make sure that we're keeping the trees healthy and growing appropriately. The major work programs in the forestry program are actually carried out through a combination of in-house staff as well as private contractors. We have an annual trimming program where we go through on about a 5 to 6 year cycle through the whole community in order to trim trees. We do that primarily for the health of the tree. Properly trimmed tree is going to stay healthy, grow appropriately, and live longer. And one of the side benefits of that work, by doing that proactive trimming when you have storm damage and heavy winds, you tend to have less branches down during those types of events. The trimming work itself is actually done by an outside contractor, and then Gary or one of his coworkers will oversee that work to make sure it's being done appropriately. One of the things the village started doing, again, to help support residents, is as a part of that contract, we actually get pricing as a part of our bid for our work for residents to be able to do work on their own private trees. So it's at their cost to either do trimming or removal, and it's not something where you'd be required to do it, but you know that the contractor has the proper insurance in place, they have the proper licenses with the Illinois Department of Agriculture, and a good cost-effective way just based on the volume of the project. The village also does planting throughout the community in both the fall and the spring. Again, that's a joint effort. We make sure that our certified arborists and staff in-house are the ones actually going to the nursery to make sure that we're picking good quality trees to replant, making sure we're getting a diverse species of trees to plant in the community and where those need to go, and then we hire a contractor to do the actual installation work. Similar, we have another program for residents. If you have a bare spot in your parkway that you'd like to beautify, we do have a 50-50 cost share program to plant a tree in the parkway. And that cost is shared for the tree purchase and planting, but the village actually takes care of the planting and then takes care of the maintenance of that tree going forward. Now, while the village doesn't per se do work on trees on private property, if you do have a disease or something appears abnormal with a tree on your property, you can call the Public Works Department at 630-719-4753, which is the general number, and we'll have one of our arborists come out to take a look at it and just to give you some suggestions and ideas on what might be happening with it. kind of tied to that, and we certainly have had some calls on it, is related to emerald ash borer. It's an issue that we've been planning for and working to respond to since 2007, when we knew, as it continued to kind of move across the United States, that it was going to end up hitting the Chicagoland area and Woodridge. As most people know, EAB, it's a small beetle that bores into the trunk of the tree, cuts off the supply of nutrients up to the crown of the tree, and the tree ultimately succumbs to it. In 2007, what we started doing is going through town and removing damaged or diseased or misshapen ash trees. Since they would be weaker just based on their state, they would be the first to fall to the pest. So that's why we kind of focused our initial efforts there. And then what we moved on to is looking through the whole community each year and really prioritizing based on the condition of the trees, the ones that are in worse shape, in order to begin doing takedowns. And that's, again, being done with a combination of in-house and contracted staff. We would anticipate probably over the next 4 to 5 years is how long it'll take to finish removal of those ash trees, and making sure that it's done before they become hazardous. And then the replanting of those trees is probably on a 9 to 10 year cycle. One of our goals, again, is to focus on taking the trees down before there's an issue with them, but also by spreading out that replanting effort, we can make sure we're continuing to purchase quality replacement trees at the nurseries, and not just trying to simply get as many as possible and not getting, again, a diverse set of trees and trees that are high quality. Again, this is another contract that we extended pricing to for residents as a part of the bid, so people who have EAB trees on their own property can take advantage of that pricing to have a contractor take the tree down and stump grind it as well. There are, and it was a question actually before the meeting, there are some chemical treatments that are available for ash trees. Certainly in the short term, so the results have been positive. There isn't necessarily a lot of that long-term data. One of the downsides is most of those chemical treatments are something that are going to be required for the life of the tree, or until the bug clears out of the area. Some communities are using injections just to prolong the life of the tree in order to stagger out those takedowns. We do have some, we're doing some limited injections in-house. Gary is certified, and we are doing some injections on some ash trees in some areas that are highly dense with ash, just to try to save or prolong the life of some of them. And then we're also working with the Morton Arboretum. They're doing an experiment of sorts, trying different levels of chemical treatments on some ash trees to see, again, what long-term might be the most efficient way of trying to deal with the bug. And just to kind of give you an idea on the scope, the village started with just over 3,000 ash trees out of the 11,000 that we have in the community. We're down to just over 2,000 now, so we are making some headway on that program. One of the things I'm going to do, and really, again, I think one of the benefits of tonight is we have Gary, who's really a kind of a Wikipedia of tree and forestry issues. He's going to talk a little bit about some of those. EAB is one of them. He's going to talk in a little bit more detail, but some of the other tree care and common questions that we get. So with that, I'll turn it over to Gary, and then myself and the other staff will be here, obviously, for questions later and afterwards at the end of the event as well.
Well, thanks, Chris. Thanks for coming out on a beautiful winter day here. A friend of mine just got back from Wasilla, Alaska, and she said it was warmer up there than it has been down here. And she also told me that they don't use salt on their roads, they use cinders. And I said, well, why don't they use salt? She said, it attracts the moose. And if you hit a 2,000-pound moose, you're in trouble. But I digress here. Let's get back to the trees. I just want to touch on, it's such a complicated subject, I could stand here for hours talking, but we'll just hit on some of the common diseases, problems that I see out there. Let's see, we can switch over here. One thing we need in this urban landscape is diversity, which right now we have a concentration of silver maples, honey locusts, and ash trees. So over the years I've tried to incorporate more native trees to the landscape, using more oak trees, Kentucky coffee trees, hackberries, London plane trees. Oh, the list goes on and on. But that's one of the problems with not diversifying, is when you have a major infestation or an invasive species, it'll take out your whole inventory of trees. So we're going to start with, well, we could go with talking about proper site selection, the right tree for the right spot. As you know, out here we have major clay, which acts more like a bathtub when the trees are sitting in it, because when they first build a subdivision, they'll strip all the dirt off, and then they build a house, and then they give you 6 inches of dirt back. Well, that causes problems, especially with the compact soils and the clay. It adds to a lot of problems, so you got to make sure you pick the right tree for the right spot. If you have a wet area, low area, it's going to call for like a red maple, bald cypress. If you have a higher area that's more loamy soil, or you want to put in red oaks, something like that, you have to do your homework when you pick out a tree. And if you do have any questions, you could always call us. We're happy to help you. Another thing we run into is this, volcano mulching. I can't understand why people do that. All it does is traps the heat around the trunk of the tree, causes decay, which leads to cankers, which leads to more problems. Proper mulching technique is to put, well, actually they say around the drip line 2 to 3 inches, but usually the parkways aren't big enough for that. So we try to go a nice circle around the tree, 2 to 3 feet out, 2 to 3 inches deep. And the mulch does decay, so you have to add more every year. Now we go to the Emerald Menace EAB. So far the estimates are 150 to 200 million ash trees are gone. This will surpass the 1940s chestnut blight that wiped out pretty much everything east of the Mississippi River and chestnuts. It's found as far as Colorado so far, and it is very destructive. We have common borers out there, 2-line chestnut borer, flathead apple borer, but they do not do the damage or the numbers that the emerald ash borer do. We have samples in the back over here. You could take a look at the larvae, what they do to the tree. They have a tendency to go in circles and serpentines all the way up, which will cut off the flow of nutrients up to the leaves. You're going to see the tops of the crown start dying off. You're going to see sprouts coming up, epidermal sprouts they call it, coming from the base of the tree. It's the tree trying to survive, trying to get through. So far, they don't make it. Once it's gone that far, you're looking at removals, unfortunately. We've tried injections. There is some hope with that. There just hasn't been enough studies done because they've only been going on for the last 4 years or so. But they show promise. This was found in 2002, so within 12 years it spread pretty much to Colorado. And now there was talk about the cold temperatures knocking out the larvae, but that was mostly northern Minnesota, where it's been below 25 below zero for extended periods of time. Unfortunately, we haven't gotten that cold, or fortunately, but I don't think it's going to take any larvae out in this area. Another thing they're talking about, University of Chicago did a study on woodpeckers, how they can actually find the larvae in the trees. And it's been shown, they did a study, they take 85% of the larvae. They will eat 85% of the larvae. But if you have that much in your tree, it's probably too late anyway. It's sad. They're nice trees. I guess Sweden already has a seed bank stock already, just in case they find a cure. We can move on here. Any questions on EAB at all? Not. Oh, okay. As you can see, they leave a D-hole shaped exit holes, but with the rough-barked ash trees, it's very hard to see, very hard. Now, I already touched on the common borer, which is the two-line chestnut borer, the flathead apple borer. They don't have that S-shaped serpentine larvae where they tunnel through. It's more of they go straight and then they veer off, which will take out some branches, but it's really not as extensive as the emerald ash borer. Move on. Galls. I don't know if any of you have anybody have a hackberry tree? That?
I have a maple that has stuff like that.
Maple, yeah, that's called bladder gall on the maples. Are they red? Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Mm-hmm. The thing, galls are more of an aesthetic factor than they are as a, I guess you would say, an economic factor. They really are not detrimental to the health of the tree itself. Unsightly, yes. Ugly, yes. But as far as killing the tree, very seldom do they do that, unless it's a real bad year. But I haven't seen any trees killed by galls itself. The thing you want to do with that is they have a tendency to overwinter in the soil, so the best thing is maintenance is just rake the leaves up, dispose of in a bag. Don't mulch them because it just scatters the eggs. And you'll see them usually in September when they come through your screens, the no-see-ums. They're that small. Move on. And this is the tank of bugland right here, scales. They are probably one of the hardest to control. We have actually lost trees due to oyster shell scale. Cottony maple scale back in the late 70s, early 80s, there was a major infestation village-wide that we ended up spraying the whole town. What they do is, cottony maple scale, which is in the lower section there on the right, they secrete honeydew, and it's very sticky. And then it turns into what they call black sooty mold, which actually collects the particulates in the air, and it turns black. And it's very unsightly, very hard to get off of cars. And if it's like the major one we had back in the 70s, it could actually kill the tree. Ended up having to remove quite a few branches. It can be controlled with the dormant oil, but the timing is critical on that. And the crawlers are so small, you pretty much need a magnifying glass to identify them. Tent caterpillars and bagworms. Anybody seen these? They defoliate trees very quickly. They come out at night and you can actually hear them feeding, eating the leaves if they're in the high numbers. Best thing to do, well, it can be controlled by BTI, which is a bacterial agent, but the only drawback with that is it kills all types of caterpillars, not just specific ones. So you're also killing monarch butterflies and swordtails. Best thing I suggest for this is cut it off, throw it in a bucket of water, and then just throw it in the garbage.
Spray with dish soap.
That too. That'll do it. Yeah, let's see. Let's talk about the much maligned carpenter ant. He's not on the slide here, but I get a lot of calls on him where they say he's eating my tree. Carpenter ants do not eat trees. They prefer decayed wood. They make a nest in decayed wood. They don't destroy a tree, actually. They just love that soft decayed wood because they make nests in there and they feed on that. So if you see sawdust at the base of your tree, it's most likely carpenter ants. Now we do treat for them, but they really don't kill a tree. They're opportunistic. They find a home where there is decay, and that's where the nests build up numbers. Honey locust plant bug. Anybody walk under a honey locust during, say, late June or July and have little green bugs fall on you?
Like little bitty worms.
They're another nuisance pest. They're I wouldn't really say detrimental. Most of these are just nuisances. And it's really not economically feasible to treat something like that. They live about 2 to 3 weeks and then they're gone. Just a nuisance. Oh, Japanese beetle, everybody knows those. Annual white grubs. If you have roses in your yard, that's the first place they go to. Or a linden tree, which are in the same family as the roses. I've seen them hatch out of the ground. You'll see a circle. It looks like a tornado. It's nothing but Japanese beetles, and they'll fly right to a linden tree, and they'll defoliate it in 2 days if the infestation's heavy enough. And Japanese beetle is actually the beetle stage of the annual white grub. So, I mean, the best thing to do is treat your lawn for grubs if you have a problem with them. Grubs love irrigated yards. If you don't water your grass, you probably won't have grubs. But they love that irrigated lawn where they can go within the first 6 inches of the soil. And then they'll eat the roots of the grass, and then they hatch into the beetles, and they'll attack your roses and your linden trees, and after that, everything's fair game.
So I think we have them because we have a neighbor that hangs
The traps.
plastic bags with pheromone.
Yeah, the traps, well, they attract them, but the numbers that they come out and hatch in, it really doesn't help any that much. Best thing to do, you could use, if you have grubs, Grub-X. That'll cut down on your Japanese beetle infestation when they hatch, because that actually kills the larvae stage of the beetle. Other things I've seen is gypsy moth is making a comeback out here. Out east, they were so bad that they actually had to use snow plows to plow them off the street. I saw a picture of a building that the whole wall was covered with them. We're right now in they're trying to actually exterminate gypsy moth. And they can do some damage. Their host plant they love the most is oak trees. They'll take oaks right out. Elm leaf beetle is another nasty little bugger that'll really defoliate elm trees. It'll skeletonize the leaves. It'll leave the vein, but it'll eat everything in between the veins of the leaves. If it's bad enough, you'll stress out the tree. Usually the trees will relief out. We can talk a little about diseases. A common one I see out here is anthracnose, which is a fungal disease usually during cold, cool, wet springs. It's where the leaves will start dropping in the springtime. New leaves, the tender leaves, they'll actually start dropping. It looks like fall sometimes. Sycamores are particularly susceptible to anthracnose. Ash trees are, but they have other problems to deal with right now. Some maples, but usually it's mostly the ash and the sycamores. If you have a crabapple tree, an older variety, by July you probably don't have a leaf left on that tree. That is apple rust, or apple scab they call it. It's another fungal disease on crab apples. That can be treated by a fungicide, but every time it rains you have to reapply. So the best bet would be to remove it, put in a resistant variety like a prairie fire crab or one of those. And you can find some really good recommendations through the Arboretum. They have a lot of resources. We're down to questions and answers already.
Some questions. I was writing them down. Sorry.
Sure.
So we have a very large ash tree in the public way in front of our house, and it has not yet shown any thinning of the leafing. We don't have any sprouts coming out of the trunk anymore.
Do you know if it's a green ash or a white ash?
I don't know. I just know it, based on the leaf orientation, it's some kind of ash. Can you tell by the color the leaves turn in the fall?
Mm-hmm.
These get kind of like that deep burgundy.
It's a white ash.
It's a white ash, okay. In the fall, when trees were coming down throughout our neighborhood, we said we're doing something proactive, so we did the soil drench that's recommended for the fall.
Did you use Bayer?
Yeah. And we were considering in the spring switching to the injection, because from what I was able to read on the internet, it's more effective. But can you do one after the other? And is the injection?
The soil drench is actually a yearly application. The injection is, they say you could get lasting effects up to 3 years, but I recommend every 2 years on that.
So that's, when you were talking about I think you mentioned a 4 or 5 year time frame, in terms of handling ash trees in Woodridge. Does that mean you're going to take down all the ash trees regardless of their condition, or within that time span?
Well, right now, I would say if you have a green ash, you will probably lose it. Now, as of last September, I was finding activity in white ash also.
I suspect they're there because I can find those holes. If you really take the time to look, you can find some suspicious looking.
But they're holding up a lot better than the greens are. As long as you have a decent crown on that doesn't show any thinning, you could probably try injections.
Okay, I just don't want to go down the route of investing hundreds of dollars only to have it taken out just because it's an ash tree and it's hit some magic 4 or 5 year village, time frame.
What we'd ask you to do is we can get your name and address before you leave. Gary and the supervisor Scott, they have a list of trees in the community.
On your list.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we've got those mapped out.
Yeah.
So it's something we're monitoring.
Yes.
We wouldn't take it down if it's healthy. If it started to decline though, even if you had injected it,
Yeah.
it declines.
I completely understand the need to do that. This thing's big. If it came down, it could cause some damage.
But if you're doing the treatments and the tree's doing well, that wouldn't take that out.
So there's not some hard wall of 4 or 5 years where the village has said ash trees are out of here. We're just not going to deal with them. So do you think the injection through that port then is?
Well, injections, you actually do have to drill through the cambium layer, okay, which is totally against everything we've been told, but there's no scientific evidence at this point saying that it works, but people I have talked to swear that the ones they have injected amidst the other ones they haven't is the only tree left standing.
So that's good to know. And from a tree guy point of view, is there any likelihood, we're going through and kind of taking away everything that emerald ash borers like to chew on. Is this a variety that's going to decide?
That's a great question, because that's the same thing I've been asking myself, is where are they going to go from here?
Chew on once all the ash trees are done.
Where are they going to go from here? Are they just going to die? So this is a bug that really hasn't been studied, even in its native land, which is China. It originated in China. It's still in China right now. But I guess the Chinese ash trees are showing more resistance than our green ash are out here. And they really haven't done any studies. Now I did read where there was instances of finding the emerald ash borer in butternut trees out in China, where they jumped from the ash to like a butternut. But out here, I have no idea yet. There just hasn't been any studies done.
More questions, sorry. So you mentioned mulching. So we're like one of those slacker homeowners that don't ever put up mulch. Is that bad, or?
Well, mulch does help the root system. It protects the trunk of the tree from any kind of damage, lawnmower damage, it does help water retention. That's gonna, I usually leave it up to the homeowner. I would like to see mulch on a tree.
Is there a particular kind of mulch that you would recommend?
A hardwood mulch that's seasoned.
Some of them have arsenic in them because they've been treated.
That's the dyed mulch. You get a good hardwood mulch that has been seasoned, because it's been shown that if you put new mulch around a tree, that say you cut a tree down, you have the chips, you put new mulch around a tree, it has a tendency to draw the nutrients out of it instead of holding the nutrients in the root zone. Now, root zones of trees, the main feeder roots are located within 6 to 12 inches of the soil. One thing you don't want to do is put up, I've seen blocks around trees up to 2 feet, and what they'll do is they'll put mulch around that. I've taken the cement blocks off, the decorative blocks, and your root zone is it's above the soil, this far above the soil, and all your feeder roots are wrapped around, they girdle it. They have nowhere else to go. They can't penetrate that brick. They just grow around in a circle. You have a big mass of feeder roots that are limited in their growth. It stunts the tree. People say, well, my tree's not growing. Well, this is why. You have 2 inches or 12 inches of landscape block around it, and it's full with mulch. The best thing to do is 2 to 3 inches around up to try to keep it maybe an inch away from the base of the tree, but maybe 2 to 3 feet out. The recommendation is around the drip line of the tree, but if you have a big mature tree, that could be 20 feet up.
And my backyard happens to back up against the tree farm. This is not a topic of pests, but, and if you don't want to talk about it here, that's fine. Are there plans to keep any of the old growth tree sections back there? I'll be at the other meeting on Monday too, so I can ask this.
There is, in the village's comprehensive plan, there is some open space that's been identified as being important to the community. So that is something, at least in the preliminary discussions, that's being talked about with the developer. I can give you the name and phone number to our community development director, Michael Mays, who can talk to you a little bit
I'm
about
actually going to see Jason on Friday.
Oh, okay.
So
And Jason's actually the planner overseeing the project, right?
it'd be nice if they kept some of those trees, because there's probably some old trees in those stands. I hate to see come down. So if you were going to recommend, so obviously now we're going to have neighbors out my back window that I've never had before, and I'm telling my husband, by God, we're planting a big tree back there. What would you recommend?
That falls under site selection, right tree for the right spot.
Down there, so
You have a lower area. And another question is, what do you want? Do you want color? Do you want shade? Do you want something to block a sight line? A lower area, I'm just going, I haven't seen the site, but just with a lower area that would probably be wetter than normal, I would recommend a bald cypress. It is actually the only conifer that does lose its needles in the wintertime, so don't be alarmed if it starts dropping in the winter. But I've had a lot of success with bald cypress. It's native to the area, to the lowland areas and the river bottoms in the northern Illinois area, and it's, I think, quite a beautiful tree. And with that, I guess we'll wrap it up. I'd like to thank the Arboretum for providing the samples and the handouts.